Hey everybody, Matt Colville here. Do you think initiative is boring? Because I do, and I think Mike Mearls does too. Mike Mearls is the lead designer of 5th edition D&D, and the reason I'm pretty sure he does think that the current system for determining when you act in a round, otherwise known as initiative, is boring, is because he posted this on Twitter a little while ago, which is his own homebrew alternate system for initiative. He's been running this system for over 20 hours now. His players report that they like it. I've talked to other DMs who've tried it, and they all report success with it. So you're going to see a whole bunch of people in the blah, blah down below, all talking about what a terrible idea this is and why it's not going to work because of this or because of that. But I'm essentially not interested in that stuff because I just think it's neat and it does a lot of stuff that I want. So let's talk about how it works. You know how normal initiative works. Well, the difference here is that, first of all, you re-roll initiative every round, because this system is based on the choices you make during combat. And since those choices change on a round-to-round basis, so too can your initiative. The group discusses what they want to do. Everyone talks about, okay, what's our plan? And then everyone announces what they're going to do when their turn comes along. So you're planning ahead, which I already like because now we're starting to talk about tactics in a way that I appreciate and that D&D sort of lacks right now. And once you've decided what you're going to do, you roll a die based on that type of action. And you can see how it works. If you're doing a ranged attack, you roll a d4, and you're very likely to go early in the round because we're counting up. We start at 1 and go up on initiative. But if you're casting a spell, you're going to roll a d12, and it's very likely you're going to go near the end. Because I think we all have this understanding that casting spells is very complex, therefore it has the highest die. But there's still a chance that the person firing a bow is going to roll a 4, and the person casting a spell is going to roll a 1 and go first. And here's another issue. As we talk about this, keep in mind that this doesn't say what spell you're casting or what ranged attack you're making or who you're attacking, so who your target is. So when you decide I'm going to cast a spell, you roll a d12 and you roll an 8 and the DM gets to 8 and you're like, well, the battle has changed since my turn. That's fine because you can still cast a spell at anyone you want, just maybe not the spell you thought you were going to cast at the target you were going to cast. So you're only dealing with the category of thing you're going to do, not the specific action you're going to take. And this just sounds super cool to me because I love, first of all, players like rolling different kinds of dice. That's the reason we use the polyhedrals. It's a lot of fun. And second of all, it encourages the players to talk and plan together. And ideally, it encourages players to make different tactical choices depending on what's going on in the battle. Like, I really want that bad guy to be dead before his turn comes. Otherwise, we're all going to get smoked. So instead of casting a spell, which might take forever, I'm going to use a ranged attack. The reason I like this system, the reason I'm attracted to it, I haven't tried it yet, is that it makes the game more tactical by emphasizing moment-to-moment decision-making, right? That's what tactics means. The notion that each turn, the players are all going to think about, ooh, what do I want to do? Because I know what I can do. I have all these different options of what I can do on my turn. And now I need to think about when I want to act. And the earlier I want to act, that has an impact on what I'm going to do on my turn, on my action. And I really like that idea. Now, already I can sense a problem with this, but I'm pretty sure that if we used it in play, it would come out in the wash. And that is, this implies a level of versatility that I don't think most characters have. I think typically if you're a ranged attack character, that's your thing, and you're not good at other stuff. And if you're a spellcaster, that's your thing, and you're not good at other stuff. So you're going to tend not to want to give up casting a spell in order to switch to something like a ranged attack because you're not good at your ranged attacks. So you'll just stick with your spell. But I think we can work that out. And just, you can see if you move and do something, then you roll a d6 and add the thing you're going to do. So if you were going to move and cast a spell, you'd roll a d6 and do a d12, and then you would act on the sum of those two things. Although, so for instance, if I was going to move and cast a spell, I roll a d6, roll a d12, and I got a 3 and an 8. Now I'm going on 11, right? And on 11, I can move and cast a spell, but that's up to you, the Dungeon Master. You could decide, nope, if you roll a d6 to move and a d12 to take your action, you move when the d6 number comes up, and then you do your spell when that plus the d12 comes up. So in our example, if I roll a 3 and then an 8, I could move on 3 and then cast my spell on 11, or I could move and cast my spell on 11. That's up to you, the Dungeon Master, to determine which sounds more plausible to you. One of them allows for a little bit more versatility because the player is going to do multiple things in any given turn, and you might let the player change what they were going to do when they get to their move action. But the other one, where you just roll them, add them, and go whenever that number is I feel like I've already lost some people, is simpler, right? You just do a little bit of math and then you go when that number says. Also, even though I really like like this system. I think I just fundamentally disagree with the dice he's assigned things, but that's one of the things I love about this is as soon as I saw it, I started thinking of ways that I might monkey with it, and that I think is good design. 5th edition, thanks to Mike Mearls largely, I think, is incredibly easy to house rule, and I think it's fun to house rule. I was talking to somebody at a game store who recognized me and talked about playing D&D, and they had just started, and they had already come up with their own Paladin Oath, their own homebrew Paladin Oath, and I just thought, wow, that's awesome. These guys have been playing for 3 weeks, and they've already started to create their own content. Mike Mearls would be very happy to hear that. I think I would probably say your die for initiative, if you're attacking with a weapon, is based on the category of weapon. A light weapon goes on a D4, a medium weapon goes on a D8, and a heavy weapon goes on a D10. I fundamentally think that the fastest and simplest thing that can happen in D&D is someone stabbing somebody else with a dagger. So I would put that category of action on the D4. This saves the D6 for moving and bonus actions, but I might revise it and deploy the D6 for other stuff. One of the things I like about this is it de-emphasizes dexterity, which currently seems like it gets a little bit more love than it deserves because strength adds to your to hit and damage bonus in melee, and dexterity adds to your to hit and damage bonus at range and your initiative, and none of the other stats work like that. So I would probably try, and we're going to try this when we stream D&D in probably September, I would probably try, a light weapon, regardless of what category. A light weapon gets a D4, a medium weapon gets a D8, a heavy weapon gets a D10, but there's another way to do it that would also be interesting, and that is there's already a system built into D&D for relating damage to how unwieldy a weapon is, and that's the damage die, right? You could just say whatever the damage die of your weapon is, that's the die you roll for initiative, right? Because a great axe is a D12 and a dagger is a D4. I think, is it or dagger is D4 or D6? I think they're D4 because they've been D4s in other editions of the game and I forget. I would probably monkey with how weapons work, but I would also think about changing how spellcasting works because having all spells go on a D12 seems somewhat unrealistic to me. Remember, we can, like I said, we can slide that bar back and forth between realism and cinematic action and making things simple. But I think this would still be pretty simple to say, okay, for spellcasting, you roll a D6 and add the spell level or maybe a D8, actually, a D8, and you add the spell level of the spell you're casting. So if you're casting a first level spell, you're on average going to go more quickly than someone who's casting a 6th level spell. And you could say cantrips are a D4, right? And that's simple and straightforward and kind of simulates the fact that cantrips are meant to be these, like firing a pistol. They're meant to be these really fast things. And it also makes sure that somebody like the Warlock, who does nothing but cast cantrips all day, doesn't end up going last in the turn all the time. So weapons, I would do it by category. I might do it by weapon die. Spells, I would say it's a D8 plus your spell level, and cantrips are always a D4. And that's a little bit noodlier, but now the spellcaster, who doesn't realistically, I think, have the choice of cast a spell or not cast a spell, it's what they do. Now the choice of which spell to cast becomes important, and that is the spirit of the system. If you have special abilities, class abilities, or spells that would otherwise monkey with your initiative, I would just allow them to change the step of the die. The step of the die means like, if a spell would let you go faster and you were going to do a D8, one step down from a D8 is a D6. One step down from a D6 is a D4. How would you run monsters under this system? I don't know. Mike hasn't talked about this. Although I did post about this. I'll put a link in the doobly-doo. I did post about this system in my subreddit, and Mike came down to my subreddit and answered people's questions. So I'll link to that, and you'll get a certain sense of how he thinks it should work or could work. Monsters, I would probably run monsters either by just giving the players information regarding when the monsters are going to act on their turn. And remember, in the normal D&D system, after the first round of combat, everyone knows when everyone is acting anyway. So I would probably, let's imagine we had 6 goblins and a hobgoblin. I would just tell the players what each of the goblins were planning on doing, and I would roll each die and then put the die next to the goblin so everybody can see who's going to be acting when. Remember, the players still don't know what each goblin's going to do exactly. They don't know who they're going to attack. If they're going to cast, if it's a goblin shaman's going to cast a spell, they don't know what spell. The other way of doing monster initiative, and probably the more straightforward, simple, and therefore easier system, is one that doesn't use the same rules as the players. The players are going to roll a die based on the category of action they're doing. The monsters are going to roll a die based purely on their species, right? So in our example of 6 goblins and a hobgoblin, I might have all the goblins. I would roll a D4 for the goblins, and all the goblins go on whatever that one number is. All the goblins act, and then the hobgoblin gets a D8, right? So the hobgoblin leader, the boss, is probably going to act later. Maybe I give him a D6. It's probably going to act later than the goblins, not always. and like a Mind Flayer would get a D12 or something, right? We all have an idea like Mind Flayers, Beholders, Dragons. These things are powerful creatures that have complex brains. They have a lot of crazy options. So they're going to go later in the turn than quick, small, fast creatures like Goblins and Kobolds. So that's Mike's initiative system, folks. Let me know what you think about it. If you've tried it, let me know what you think. You'll see me give this a shot when we start running D&D. And I've got a couple of other interesting little house rules, some of which I've stolen from other games, that I'm going to spring on my players that we'll cover here in this channel before we do so. I'm really excited by this, as you can tell. I think it has a lot of promise, and it just sounds fun. And I like games that are fun, and making D&D more fun makes me happy, and I think the players get a huge kick out of it. That's it. I just wanted to talk about initiative, folks. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Until next time, peace out.